Internet Vikings World of Experts.
Hi, everybody. Hopefully a lot of you guys have attended our webinars, but to those of you who are here for the first time, my name is Elena. I am looking after our US market for Internet Vikings. We have been working on the US market pretty closely in the last 2 years when this thing started to heat up for the iGaming space. And we are excited to share the regulatory and otherwise knowledge that we have accumulated in all this time.
Rickard?
Yeah, of course. And I'm Rickard, one of the founders of Internet Vikings, currently the CEO, and working a lot with on the technical side, infrastructure, what we can do together with our customers, and navigating the landscape of sports betting and iGaming in the US.
Yes, and my name is Jesper Kärrbrink. I've been in this industry for quite some time, being the CEO at Svenska Spel, Mr. Green, and chairman in a lot of different iGaming companies, and one of them is Internet Vikings. And I'm really happy to be here. We always have a lot of fun doing these seminars together with Elena. Elena has this amazing expertise when it comes to the US, and Rickard when it comes to the technology side of it. And I'm just a talking head here, but it's fun to be here.
No, that's an understatement, Jesper. It's nice to see so much audience joining from the United States, because when we started those webinars, it was predominantly European audience, so European industry representatives interested in moving into market. But judging now that so many people coming from the USA, now I can see Beck from Las Vegas and Jeremy from Florida, that it means people are expanding within the market as well. So it's nice to see so much industry straight from the place of action. 2022 has been a really eventful year in the US iGaming and online sports betting market, with New York coming into the picture, which was huge, and now Massachusetts joining in. So, and it seems like 2023 will continue the trend. So probably without any further overdue, since we have so many people online already, I should pass my microphone to the speakers, and we'll probably start with Jesper giving the market overview, Elena speaking about compliance, and then Rickard picking up with the tech requirements. Are we all good to go?
Indeed, we are. Thanks a lot, Julia. Nice introductions and a good warm-up. And yes, as I said before, it's really great to see everyone here. I think it's more than 100 people pre-registered to this conference. And what you said there, Julia, about having more and more US people here, I mean, that's the way it should be, because this market is growing fast, and US is becoming a dominant region in the iGaming market and the sportsbook market, of course. So great to have you here. And I think we should just start with a small update on where we are in terms of states that has been regulated. So we could take the first slide, please. And if you look at this, there's a difference between, and this is a bit of a difference to Europe, basically, where you have online casino, you have sportsbook, and vice versa. While in the US, it's a bit different based on the Wire Act, where the Wire Act applies and where the Wire Act doesn't apply. And I will ask Elena soon to dig a bit deeper into this one for us Europeans. For the US audience, this is very familiar ground. But if you look at this one, we have online sports betting today in 25 states. And we have iGaming as online casino in 6 states and online poker in 5 states. And this has come quite fast in time. But I would say that the interesting fact on this slide is what we don't see. I mean, there's another 25 states that potentially could have the sportsbook as it is regulated right now. And even if we don't get all the full 50, I think we will end up in the future in the mid 40s or something like that, because this is a product that everyone in the US knows about and basically wants to have and play, and it's good revenue for the states. And then we have basically 40 plus states also that could be iGaming states. And if we think this market is growing fast today and is big today, it's just the beginning. But we will come back to that later. But before we go further, couldn't you explain a bit, Elena, about the Wire Act, how it works, and why sportsbooks are within it, so to speak, and why it doesn't apply on the online casinos.
Absolutely, Jesper. Basically, yeah, to give everybody a little bit of background is really iGaming market has started to pick up in the US ever since 2018. And what happened on May 14 was the US Supreme Court struck down a decision. It's called Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act. It basically means that everybody now can pass sports betting and iGaming laws if they wish. But besides that act, we are also talking about Wire Act. Wire Act means that in order to prevent organized crime and everything, the states, sports betting cannot happen between the states' lines. So now the states, when they are gonna pass these laws to allow for the gaming and sports betting, they can do so, but only within the boundaries of their state. So it's important to know that both of those things when we're looking at the US and trying to understand where US is right now. So yeah, ever since 2018, as Jesper said, it's really been heating up for many states. Like right now, it's 25 plus states that allow sports betting, and only in second year, ever since that act was struck down, 11 states have passed those laws. It's been up and down over the years. Like in 2020, we had 3 states, and then the biggest state was last year, 2021, where 6 states passed after the first initial wave. 2022 has not been as big, with only 3 states passing laws. But what we're seeing here is definitely a huge interest to online gaming that obviously the pandemic has only sped up.
Indeed, and as we said, I think we only see that, and as Elena is saying here, we only see the beginning of this growth, and we will come back to this further down the line. And should we continue, Elena, with the update of the legal update 2022 and what happened there? You said 3 states passed this year, and some didn't pass. Like there was a lot of expectations around California. And they didn't. And please, if you could comment on that one as well, because that's the 8th largest economy in the world, I think. So of course, the industry looks forward to that opening up.
Absolutely. As we've started talking a little bit after 2021, the expectations were really high. A lot of experts were predicting at least 5, 6 to 7 states passing the laws. This year a little bit underdelivered. In total, only 3 states passed, and 11 with a variable degree of success did not pass those laws this year. So far we have 3 states, which is not bad at all. We see, even though a lot of them did not pass the laws this year, they're definitely going to attempt to pass those laws next year. California, everybody was looking at California. Obviously, the biggest economy in the US was very exciting, but it was expected, unfortunately. But hopefully, next year, it's gonna happen either way for Texas. A lot of experts are saying that the second largest economy in the US is very likely to pass the law. So even though 2022 has a little bit underdelivered in regard of legalizing this activity, hopefully next year is going to be a little better.
Good. Sorry, continue.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to add that the 3 states that passed the sports betting, Maine, Massachusetts, and Kansas, they're passing it on the model where there are multiple sports books in the state, which is great compared to states, for instance, like Oregon, where there's only 1 sports book. So all of these 3 states look really good to a lot of companies that are looking to enter those states. So it's definitely going to be interesting. Out of these 3, Massachusetts is the biggest with a population of 7 million compared to Kansas, 3 million, and Maine, 1.3. So it's definitely going to be exciting. There is already a huge appetite for Massachusetts that is going to launch next year. So we're definitely keeping a close eye on these 3 states.
Good. And where are we on sportsbook states opening up for iGaming as well? Where do you think we are heading there?
Absolutely, yeah. We'll talk a little bit about 2023 predictions and what happened this year a little further down the road. But basically, what happened is that these 3 states passed sports betting laws, online sports betting. There were no iGaming states this year, unfortunately. But again, what we're seeing is that there's more and more appetite in that, when we're hoping 2 to 3 states are going to be able to pass those laws next year.
Good. And the both of you are working with the regulators and speaking to them on a regular basis. Why are the differences in the regulations? I mean, we have the same in Europe. There's one regulation in Sweden, there's another one in the UK, there's a third one in Denmark, etc., etc. We have the same here. So what's the biggest similarities and what's the biggest differences?
Of course. I do think because sports betting and online gaming is so new to the US, they're taking more of a cautious approach where, this new thing, it's so big and so massive. There are all these regulations that need to be in place, responsible gaming, how to do it properly. So I do think sports betting is something everybody can understand and something that is easier to launch. And a lot of states choose to start there. Instead of passing one big thing, they're going to pass something that something smaller and maybe start there and then see and build up on that, which obviously makes a lot of sense. And even when we look at the geography of the states that are passing the new laws, you're seeing that they are in sort of a cluster. So a lot of states are looking to what their neighbors are doing. Like New Jersey, Connecticut, New York, Delaware was the first one, and so on and so forth. So it's definitely about being cautious, but also seeing what other people are doing. And again, we do already see huge success in the states where online casinos are allowed. So hopefully more and more states are going to join the wagon.
And Rickard, it seems that on the technology side, the difference is not that massive. I mean, if you look at these 3 states, one is having mobile betting on via 4 tribals, and Massachusetts is doing 15 licenses, and Kansas is doing 6. I mean, as an offering, that's quite a big difference. And handling that from a regulatory perspective, when you apply, if you don't have one of the 6 licenses, you're kind of out of that market. Yep. But from a technical perspective, they are not that far away, are they?
Like technically, no. There is what you should provide. You should have the security side, the information security, the protection, also the availability. So if there is something going on, that there is logs, there is information, there is backup. That is more or less the same. Usually, the differences between the differences, where you need to host the actual servers, the backups. You need to have it in a licensed premises. Do you need to have it in your market access, where you have your market access deal? These are the kind of things that's a little bit the difference between the different states.
But when my point is, and you can help me here, but when you have got the license and you get the second license and the third license, it's not that you need to set up a total new operations per state. You can still operate in a similar way, state over state over state, when it comes to marketing and
exactly.
techno. And
you can have the same
and knock and things like that.
Yeah, so that's what we are seeing, state by state by state. It's just a replication. It's just a mirror on each and every state, what we set up.
And on the commercial side, it's basically the same. There are very few, Elena, this is a question to you. There are very few limitations or different limitations in marketing as such. It's if I run a marketing campaign in New Jersey, I could basically run the same marketing campaign in Kansas if I wanted to.
Yeah. Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure you should, because it's different states and different offerings, but you could in theory. Good. I think this is clearing a lot. And as you said, a bit disappointed with only 3 states opening up 2022. We had big hopes in 2021. But as we said before, still is a really, really strong growth in these states. And us from Europe, we really used to handle a market-by-market approach. And I think the US is the same. You always handle a state-by-state approach. So there are still so much to do in the states where you have a license today. And if you are new and want to go into all this, I think the more states you can choose from, the more difficult it will be as well. So I know we talked about this the last seminar we had, and we kind of recommended that if you're not super huge and super big, you should take it a state by state approach, because as a market they are big enough for a single player. There are some brands that probably need to roll out a bit larger. Yep. Please, Elena, the next slide. See where we.
Yeah, so along with a lot of regulatory updates, we did have operational updates. So this year we had 5 states going live. As you can see, they are different population and different launch dates, hence the different generated revenue to date. But we are seeing that all these numbers of the revenue are pretty comparable to their population and and when they went live. The biggest obviously is New York, launched in January. It has become a record breaker right away. And many states, again, we don't know if other states, maybe besides Texas, are going to reach New York in terms of revenue and handle. But it's been the biggest event this year, New York, and everybody's obviously looking at it. Even though to providers, to sportsbook providers, New York has not been the easiest with a lot of with very big tax burdens and limitations. But it certainly has been exciting to see how the revenues just keep going up and up and up for these new states.
Yeah, I mean it's a boom, and if you consider the population there, the revenue year to date is quite amazing actually. And but still, looking at comparative numbers in some European countries, it still has a large growth opportunity into those numbers. I really think New York, yes, tough taxes and some limitations, etc., but it's still a very, very interesting market. And when and if New York opens up for online casino, iGaming as well, that will be. And I understand if you have a standard, you have a presence in New York as a sportsbook, then you have built a brand that you can also hook up the iCasino brand on. That could be a very, very smart play over time, but it's costly in the beginning. We know that there's some enormous marketing spend the first couple of months there from the big ones. So, but once again, it might actually pay off quite well in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we are going to jump into 2023 a little bit later, but yeah, a lot of people are saying that New York is not super close, but it's inching closer and closer to legalizing.
And we got a question: is New York revenue or handle? That's revenue, Elena.
That is the revenue.
Yeah, exactly. So it's quite significant. Are there any states where iGaming or the sportsbook has become kind of a disappointment in the general public or among the politicians and so forth? Is there any chatter about this?
Not that I have seen, and I don't think you'll find that data, because again, like what we're seeing, every state that launches, like they do underperform sometimes a little bit, especially in the beginning, but overall it's growth month over month, year over year. So it's definitely a very lucrative industry to be in.
And from some point of views, a lower growth could also be a positive thing when you speak to the politicians and so forth, especially here in Europe, where some markets are actually monitored on not growing too fast.
Yeah, exactly.
This is interesting, and once again, this is just a handful of markets that was launched 2022, and we will see 3 new ones coming here next year, and then I think we all believe that there will be perhaps even a handful 2024.
Potentially, yeah. And again, hopefully there will be more states that are going to launch in 2023. So far, all of the states that have passed the laws, only these 3 ones should launch next year, and they will launch next year. But again, maybe, especially it's easier with the smaller states, like Kansas. Kansas passed the law this year, and they're already live since September. So, I do think that there's definitely going to be maybe 1 or 2 more states to launch next year.
Cool. And JD, you're absolutely correct. The population in New York is close to 20 million. The 8.5 is New York City. But since Elena is a city girl, we took that number. No, and it's still, even if we compare this with the 20 million, the 1.5 in revenues is still a really, really good number. And once again, it will grow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is an interesting slide as well. I mean, if you look at the total GDR for gaming or gambling in Q3, it's up 8.8%. And I think the general US economy was up 1.2, 1.3. And if you look at the year-on-year growth, year to date, it's 14.7. There's, of course, a post-COVID effect on this, where casinos open up again and more people are coming out and visiting the physical casinos. But if you look on the iGaming side or the online side of this, the sports betting is the total sports betting. There is absolutely in that number, there are still some casino betting. But I would say that, Elena, 80% of this would be on the mobile or
correct,
so to speak. So if you look at this number, then 80% and 71% growth year on year, year to date, and then iCasino is in the 30%. And those numbers are amazing. But once again, back to what we don't see here. This is coming from a handful of markets, and we should also remember that we if you look at the European numbers, we're seeing the same kind of development, because this is the early adopters. The early adopters are coming from the land-based casinos moving over to online. And in Europe, we saw these growth numbers, double digits, up to the 30%, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, because that's the population that is moving over from bricks and mortar to online. And on top of that, you have all the new states here. So I would say that what we have here is kind of a growth bomb in being in the US. So if you have each state in itself will continue growing quite strong, but then if you also add new states on that one, the total market growth for online will be high, really high.
Exactly, and especially Jesper, it's really interesting to see how literally in every category we're seeing an increase compared to the same period, in Q3 and even in the same period of Q1, I'm sure Q4. But what's interesting is that, as we're coming out of the pandemic, and people are coming, maybe back to the offices and maybe to the land-based casinos at some point. But in the US, what we're seeing is also a massive inflation right now. And just besides the inflation, the gas prices are also really, really high. So, states like California, where you don't really have statewide gambling and you do have 2 casinos, south of LA, 2 hours from them, we're seeing that even though, there are a lot of like economical hurdles, but the appetite towards the industry does not cease. It's actually growing, which is really interesting.
I mean, you're on to something there. I think you're right. The transformation from offline to online might be faster because people don't tend to travel and spend gas money on such. But also we know that the gaming industry is historically quite resilient to a slowdown in the economy. So it's one of the perks, it's one of the entertainments that you still give yourself, so to speak, and think and believe you can afford. And so I think those numbers, even if we see high inflation, we see a bit of a downturn in the economy, I think we still will see pretty high growth numbers here and green arrows pointing up. And Rika, when you speak to customers, is this the picture they are giving, or yeah? No one is saying that we are slowing down due to.
Absolutely not, and especially when new states opening up. So it's more like if we are working with a customer in one state, then it's a new state, then it's the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. It's always what's happening the next quarter.
Yeah.
What states will we start and open up? Where we will launch the next quarter? That's the discussion.
And exactly. So once again, I think we have some pretty interesting years ahead of us, and that's also the American entrepreneur's way of doing business. You kind of look at opportunities, and I think we see the same with the regulators in this. They're very, we're coming back to that one, but they are quite supporting in this one. Let's see here. AM, will you be sharing the deck later on? Yes, we will. So the deck will be available for everyone. And basically, this is a bit what we talked about, Elena. What we see here is the add-on effect for each state that comes. The market kind of double, not perhaps doubles, but the growth pace doubles basically. And once again, we are on a handful market on iCasino, and we are on half of the potential markets on sportsbook. So we have the underlying growth, as you can see. Each of these bars are getting wider and wider to the right, and we're adding more and more bars or feeds on top of each other. So that's the cumulative effect that we will see, and this is really driving the growth. Any comments here, Elena? We can see the Q2 drop in 2020. That's quite understandable.
That was expected. But the cumulative effect that you mentioned is something that we see, that we just continue consistently seeing, and that's why I think even the states that have not legalized online sports betting and online gaming yet are really looking to do that, because again, as there's still inflation going, states are looking for sources of revenue into the budget. So I would say that as complex as legislative process can be, that the regulators are also the lawmakers are really motivated to see this additional revenue stream coming into their states funding. So that's why we do think that 2023 is certainly going to be exciting.
Exactly. So launch of 2023. We have the free one we talked about earlier, the Massachusetts, Maine, and Ohio, and then the two more there. They're likely to introduce sports betting and online casino. Could you elaborate a bit more on that, because those are of course super interesting?
Yeah, like we talked earlier, there were 11 states that introduced the bills, but they died at one point or the other in the process. We do think that many of those states will try to reintroduce the bills again, especially the ones that advance pretty far down the road. The states that are very likely, obviously they are not all of them, but we based on the research that we have done, a lot of experts consider these states to be the states that are going to reintroduce the sports betting bills. And Texas is on top of that, because what we have seen, I have seen some experts evaluate between 55 and 60% of Texas actually passing a sports betting law. You know how us in the iGaming industry like to make predictions and talk about percentages and likelihood. So that's what it looks like for Texas. So I would say it's pretty high. And that's why we're thinking that next year, 2023, is going to be so exciting, because again, second largest economy in the US is even bigger than New York. It's definitely going to be an interesting launch, and I myself cannot wait to see it happening. In addition to sports betting, we also talk about online casinos, obviously. Even though 2022 has not been the most successful in that regard, we are seeing a lot of movement in Indiana, Illinois, and even New York with regard to passing online casino laws. And going back to the percentages again, I have seen that I have seen 75 to 80% that at least one state is going to pass online casino laws, which is again pretty high. And these states like Indiana, New York, Illinois, they already have sports betting market. So it would be easier for them to pass the laws, and hopefully we will grow. As much as I wish that all of these states were to pass online casino laws.
Yeah, but it's actually from a kind of a more philosophical perspective, it's not that bad that it goes slow, because it's not that there's not enough to do for operators and providers today. You might think, yes, faster, but having 3 next year and one of them being whatever, even if it's not New York, it's still just going to ramp up and build this cumulative effect. So I think if we do 3 per year here, that will have a very, very strong growth the coming 5 to 6 years or even 10 years. So No, this is really, really interesting, and I know that we at I think it was the last seminar someone asked, is it too late to enter this market? And I think everything here actually points to a big no to that question. It's absolutely not too late, and I remember when I saw the 5th iGaming casino launch in Europe, and I said, oh, these guys are too late, they will never make it. They are today one of the biggest casinos in the world, so I was totally wrong. And we still see successful launches, both on the provider side and on the operator side in Europe. And we have been doing this for quite a long time now. So no, to everyone out there, it's absolutely not too late. Rickard is telling me that, yes, in hosting it's too late because there's only Internet Viking out there that can do the job. But honestly, between us, I don't think he's right. I think everyone could try whatever they want. It's a huge market coming here.
But I can just add to that, like what we are seeing is that most customers need like a quarter, like 2 months to a quarter to actually launch something, like technically get it launched, like get it like everything done. And with that, you can only launch like 4 to 5 different, maybe 6 different states per year.
Exactly.
And so everyone within this industry will have enough to do within the next 5 years.
Yeah, easily.
Just by natural growth.
Easily.
And yeah.
And then, Rickard, I mean, some strategic planning, providing capabilities to early adopters. I call this selling the shovels to the gold diggers, and apparently some wiser person than me changed the headline on this slide. But there are some things that you have to do, and that is kind of. And couldn't you walk us through this? I mean, it starts with licenses, of course.
Absolutely. No, but it starts with licenses due to the history of gaming in the US. It is very license heavy. It is a lot of things that you need to have in place. It's not complicated. It's just that you need to have your documents. You need to have everything around you, around your UBOs, around the executive teams.
It's not complicated.
No, it's not complicated.
But it's cumbersome.
Yeah.
Yes, it takes forever and it takes a lot of time, but it's not complicated.
Exactly. When you've done it, it's there, and like a lot of states are looking at other states. Okay, you are licensed in that state. Perfect.
That goes faster and faster.
Faster and faster, and they know that like a lot of the states have similar legislations. Yeah. It's the same fingerprint forms. It's the same setup. Yeah. So I would say that's where it starts, and that's and talking with the regulators and work to get it with them. It's also something. And take advice on this. Use a lawyer or a legal firm or whoever who's expert in this one. And then the security focus is high. I mean, and as a provider, you should have that covered, so to speak. And being ISO certified. Is that a must in all states, or is it just really good to have? In most states, you need to be either like your providers or yourself needs to be ISO 27001 certified, or have a SOC 2 report. Like I've done the SOC 2 reporting, which means that you have control over information security. It's not about having locks on your servers. It's about information security, that your player data, that your privacy information, that you have control over what you're doing.
Yeah, and this is also quite basic. And we also know that most regulations, both in the US and in Europe, is actually based and built on the ISO standard. So this is something you should do as a company, even if you're small or large. It doesn't really matter. You should take the time to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and it's also it helps the organization to be more secure, because the iGaming industry, the sports betting industry, it is an industry that's targeted by hackers, by someone doing ransomware, doing fraud. And that's why it's so important for everyone within the industry to have these kind of like security add-ons.
And then the key word in this industry is scalability. I mean, this is a business of scale. When you scale, the real big profits are coming. And that's why we see all the emerging acquisitions out there. The larger will get larger, because then you get more profitable. But also when you plan this, you have to plan for scale, like hosting and these things. And how do you do that? Do you buy a lot of service? Do you spend a lot of money up front, or?
What we try to do is literally take that on as a provider, that kind of that cost and be able to, so the customer can provision what they need, and they don't need to buy a lot of servers. They don't need to have a lot of servers on the balance sheet. We take that on, and everyone in 2022, 2023 want to buy hosting and compute power when they need it, because that's the way you should be doing it for the last 10 years. Not buying it, having it sitting, just costing money in a data center.
But this is a bit key, because you need to have physical servers. You need to store them somewhere, and you need to run them and operate them. And basically, that's what Internet Vikings is doing.
Yes.
Instead of me, and I can focus on doing the business.
Exactly. I had a meeting with one operator just the other day here. There's like, where he worked, it was like we had servers in our basement to be able to ship to different states. It's like, that's not what you as an operator should be doing. You should have a provider that helps you with that, because that's how people want to buy compute power.
And but having that said, on the other side, you have a hardware shortage today. I mean, we can't. It's super difficult to source technology stuff today, like servers and routers and things like that. Are you building yourself, or you have a how you cope with this?
No, we build it ourselves. We
good.
Yeah. So we're working with our vendors on that, and we buy servers like 3 to 6 months ahead. So we, like, with our planning, we can see a little bit what we have in our pipe, how we work together with our customers, and see, like, also on the legal side, if 5 states open up in February, then we probably need more servers. But if they open up in June, then we probably need more servers in June. And these are the kind of things we work on, like not daily basis, but on a monthly basis, just to understand what kind of need we have. So we don't have servers sitting in our basement that's not in good use, because that's a cost and we don't want that. So it's always that balance, but that's our job to make that efficient.
Exactly, and we taking the Internet Vikings taking the risk there, so to speak, and being a bit ahead. Yeah, good. And you met a lot of regulators, and they come out as quite professional when it comes to what they're doing. They understand why they're regulating, and they understand the business needs, etc., etc. What's your view on that?
No, but absolutely. Like, I've traveled around. I have talked. I've met so many regulators the last year. At G2E, we met with a lot of them. We just sit down, talk, understand the challenges they have, and also the possibilities. And what we are seeing is that they really want to change. They want to understand. They want to make it easier for the industry, but at the same time make it secure, so it's not.
Yeah, they have to regulate.
It is a regulation for a reason, because it is it's a market that needs to be regulated. But on the other side, they're very professional and also open to ideas what to do and how to do things within their legislation.
And then I think we have already covered this one, but the last bullet point here is it's still an early market, and I mean, we can just underwrite that.
It's we have said that for the last 5 slides. It's still the same thing. It's
early.
It's
early days. Okay, good. We have a question here. What are the steps to set up a new business in the US? And then we got a reply from BK. Depends on the state. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. But Elena, if we take the overall, that question is particularly good. And if we take the overall, what is needed? Where do you start? I want to enter US as a provider, or I want to enter US as an operator. Where do I start? It's a decision taking.
Of course, you start with, again, the registration with the state, because you do have to have it to do business in every single state. So that's usually, the step one that Internet Vikings also does, is that we register with the state, and then you start looking at your technology providers, because again, it's all based on the state-by-state cases. So we do, like, for instance, we do need to have data centers in every single state. And that's you as a provider or an operator. This is something that you need to also think about, that there has to be a location in every single state. So we identify our technology providers and start working on the licensing. It's not a rocket science. It's a very short bullet list, but having all of the corporate stuff out of the way, licensing stuff, as well as technological stuff, is usually a good 3-step plan for every state.
Good. So you start with register your company. you find suppliers for hosting and such, and then you start the licensing process. And then when you go that, it's basically business as usual. You do your marketing plans and you do your launches and you build your product, etc., etc., etc. So it's not more that it's basically the same principles as in Europe. You do the same things,
Yep.
but that's really good to know.
But you do it per state, and that's where it becomes,
You do it per
like,
state, exactly.
For me and Elena, that's where it becomes like, okay, you really have a structure for
Yes,
it, because doing it in like we do in 18 different states, it is.
But you always start. I mean, our advice has been to start with one, to learn the process, and then you just do it one by one by one by one, and a bit dependent on where. If you're an operator and you plan to take New York, wow, that's a chunk to take, and it might be that you stay there for a year or 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
While we have to be in every state now because our customers are demanding every state. So the internet banking speed on rollout is a bit higher. Julia, we are done with the presentation.
I'm back with the Q&A session. Yes, it was an amazing presentation by you guys. Well, a lot of information, and I can see that the chat has been very active. Quite a few questions were sent through. Guys, please don't hesitate to send more questions. If you have any unanswered questions or you doubt about something, please shoot them in the chat box. We're going to answer them right now. Before we start, I saw a few questions asking whether we're going to be sharing the deck. Do you mean the presentation by that? If so, then yes, without a shadow of a doubt, we are able to share the presentation to everybody who attended the webinar. And we also have a present for those who have stayed until the very end, which I will announce in a bit. So without any further delays, let's start with the questions. So, do hosting prices vary based on the location? I mean, different states, or is it more or less the same? If it does, then what factors affect the price?
But I can say that it varies a little bit depending on the availability of data centers in that state. In some states, there is just one data center. In some states, there is 2. In some states, there is like very high bandwidth costs. But it's marginal, I would say, compared to other costs. But it varies a little bit.
Not a viewer's question, but a question for me would say, do you have any recommendations how to cut down the costs?
No, but don't buy everything at once. Buy compute power when you need it. We have our private in-state cloud that can be used in every state, like more or less every state, that you can, you only buy the capacity when you need it. That's the easiest way to save money on hosting. When you have a lot of players, that's when you should have a lot of compute power. If you don't have any players, you don't have an RGS running, then you shouldn't need so much capacity.
Great, thank you very much. And another techie question probably is going to be for Rickard as well. Hi, is the process of scaling up hosting infrastructure different in different states? I'm mainly interested in the process in New York, Massachusetts, and New Jersey.
I would say New Jersey. If you're working with a cloud, it's not, you can just scale it up within there. Usually, depending on how much you scale it, you might need to submit a new architecture diagram to DG to describe what you're doing. Looking at New York, you need to have it in one of the licensed premises in New York State, which requires a little bit more time. It requires a little bit more efforts than just going to like a state where you can put it in any other data center. Massachusetts, I don't actually know off the top of my head exactly what's how quick and the regulation of a scale up.
Enrique, when you talk about cloud hosting, that's interstate private cloud hosting.
Yes,
speak, yes.
That's the Internet Vikings in-state cloud.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so many different cloud providers across the world. It's some of them have built huge ones that only have like Amazon. They only have like 4 data centers across the entire US. and that's a problem for them because they can't provide anything they need to work. They can't from those data center.
They can't follow the regulation.
Exactly.
Well, let's carry on. Elena, your updates have caused an avalanche of reactions. I would assume the question, did I hear Texas is legalizing in 2023 is not so much a question. I believe you cannot guarantee that. But yeah, people...
I think we would say 50 to 60% likelihood.
The chances are pretty good. It's not certain, but yeah, we're hoping for it for sure.
Ohio live on January the 1st. And the next one will be a techie one as well. Again, a lot of techie questions, guys. Apart from the webinar, we're also doing regular live streams with Rigert Live with the CEO once a month, where he answers all techie questions. And most of them are tied to the United States iGaming on online sports betting market. So stay alert on our LinkedIn page and follow those as well. So the question would be, what technology is being used to ensure they're compliant on day one of launch and continue to stay compliant? I guess by they refer to operators.
No, but it's basically working with someone that knows the industry. I would say that is the best way to do it. Not like working with other Internet Vikings, one of our peers in the industry that provides that kind of service that has done it. Not like 2 times, but like 10, 15 times before per state.
And also a supplier that understands the importance of regulation and being in dialogue with the regulators, so you can adapt accordingly. There will always be changes, and changes is a positive thing unless you're surprised by them. And that's kind of Rickard's and Elena's job to make sure that we are not surprised by these changes, but actually can help our customers with this. So I think what Rickard is saying here, finding an Internet Vikings or a peer having this as a philosophy is the key here.
Yeah, and I would just like to add that obviously there's a huge amount of companies that you have to engage in. Starting with affiliates, then hosting provider, and then odds provider, and then where your servers are located. There are many levels, and each of that level has to be compliant. So again, to you as an operator or as a supplier, it helps to go with somebody who is already licensed in that state and who already has knowledge of how the system works and how the changes should be processed and so on and so forth. It just decrease the time to market or whatever else needs to be in place. But also, I have seen that there are actually companies, if you Google, there are compliance companies that help you go through every single step and make sure you are, there's not going to be any delays or any additional questions from the regulators, which will speed up the license. So there's definitely, again, because the industry is so growing, a lot of companies, see different opportunities in one or the other. Like, there is already software that helps you file all the licenses to make it easier. There is a company that helps you be compliant, and so on and so forth. So definitely, this whole process does not have to be as cumbersome as you were to do it on your own.
Good. Julia, there's an interesting question here from, I think it's from Lauren, Colorado. If you can get it up there, I can read it.
Is it in the USA? Do you foresee?
Yes, exactly. And this is
offering to customers in the next 5 years. Sport seems to be the point of the sword, but what other offerings do you all see being crucial in the future for online casinos that are pointed towards the USA market?
This is a really, really good question and a really interesting question. And the basis for this is there a big difference between how you gamble on in the US and in the rest of the world? And if you compare, let's compare with Europe that we know more about. And I would say no, it's very similar. And I think the gaming market actually started in some extent in both the US and Europe at the same time with the big casinos in Monte Carlo and Las Vegas, etc. And take off. And then the US gambling market has taken off and it has been much more prominent for many years. and then the iGaming market opened up a bit earlier in Europe. And what you see there is that the games that works in the beginning is exactly the games that works in the land-based casinos. So if there's, and you can even go down to titles on slots. If you have a slot on a land-based casino and you move that to online, exactly when the online market is open up, that's the game that the players want to play, because the players are moving from land-based to online, and they recognize the games there and feel a bit secure with these games. And is there a big audience for live for table games in the US in the casinos? Yes, it is. It's huge, and also we see that in the numbers that the table games, the RNG table games in the US is actually higher than in Europe. So I would say that live casino is definitely a product for the US market, definitely. And sportsbook, of course, sportsbook will always be the tip of the sword because it's such a broad product. There's more people playing sportsbook than is playing iCasinos, basically, at least in Europe, and I think it's the same in the US. But from an iGaming perspective, from an online casino perspective, yes, you will have table games, RNG based. You will have slots. The slots in the beginning will be very, very similar to what you played on the casinos, and then you will have live casino. Then over time, we will see this develop. The slots will be more. We have seen this in Europe. The games you play today is much, much more advanced than the games we started with in Germany or Sweden or Denmark. And we will see the same in the US, I assume. We will also see other kind of games coming, a bit more social driven games with skill-based and peer-to-peer gambling and so forth. There's such a development on games now, but the foundation will be sportsbook, slots, table games, RNG, and live casino. And I think live casino could take up to 20-25% of the market in 5 to 10 years' time. But that's my prediction and my guess. I've been wrong before, and sometimes I've been right, so you take it with a pinch of salt.
Thank you, Jesper. Thank you very much. And we also had a few pre-submitted questions that were sent prior to the webinar. I'm going to read them out. So that would be, are there any regulatory requirements for the states openings in 2023 that are unlikely uniquely different from states that are already open? Thomas Kepler.
Elena, that's your question.
Yeah, I'll take this one. Basically, the states that are opening up, the three of them, they are pretty similar to what we have seen so far. Basically, in the US, there are different models how states can go about it. There could be one monopoly, and then there could be at least a few of the other, a few sportsbook or so-called skins that allow multiple games and healthier competition in the state. So the states that are going to open up belong to the second category, that there will be multiple sports books that are going to be allowed, but they all pretty much follow the same standard and the same procedures. And like, again, as we have said already, that a lot of the lawmakers and regulators look to other states, and then, not trying to reinvent the wheel, but they're seeing what works in other states and what do they think they're going to work in their state, and then they're passing it. So it's not, the states that we're seeing are not going to be significantly different from everything we have seen so far.
Julia, there's another really interesting question there, because yes. I would like to know the answer on it, and I will put Elena here on the spot. It's from AD about the payment providers.
Yes, when you mentioned the Wire Act, does that only apply to sports betting and does not apply to iGaming? What about payment providers?
Yeah, it was ruled in 2021 that Wire Act only applies to sports betting. That's why we're saying such a thing as multi-state online poker games. There are a few states that are already doing it. Again, it's very dependent on the type of game, because for poker it does make sense to do it multi-state, and a lot of regulators are reluctant to pass the laws that are going to allow that. I mean, not that they're reluctant, but there are significant considerations, like from state responsibility it becomes federal responsibility if something goes wrong. But it is correct that it only applies to sports betting. Now, if there will be any multi-state casino games. I don't know if we're going to see that. The chances of that happening.
But Elena, the key question is, what about payment providers? Are they within the Wire Act or not, or are they local? Are they by state, or can they have? Or perhaps that's a theoretical question. If you don't have a game post states, you don't need to have a wallet post or cross states either.
Exactly. Yeah. Basically, everything has to be contained in a state. And even though Wire Act does not necessarily apply to iGaming, you still cannot play from the other state. Like me being in New York, I cannot play a casino in New Jersey.
So even where the Wire Act is not applicable, there are geofenced.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because of state legislation. That's because of the state legislation.
And which means that if I'm a payment provider, I need to provide payment per state. It can't be cross borders unless it's poker then. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. That's good. Thanks for that.
And another good one, I would say, what role will the native American casinos play in an online offering? Is there an advantage that Native American casinos have over and above state-regulated casinos?
I can take this one because we worked with a few, and I would say knowledge about the market. There is 50 different markets here, and if you take a market, and they're so local, and taking those local markets and know what people want to have in that market, that's what I would be. That's the advantage they have.
And Elena, is there any advantage for the tribes in? Can they offer iGaming casino faster than a non-tribe, so to speak, in a certain state? Do we see such an example? We saw one example here that they have the online sportsbook. I think it was Ohio or Maine or whatever it was. Are there such differences as well?
Yeah, for sure. I would say that Native American casinos are involved in the process in a way that where there are tribes in a state, if the state is looking to pass the law, they would have to account for those casinos, because it's usually a negotiation. Because some part of their business is now going to be taken by online, so they absolutely have to be included. And again, there are states where there are no tribes, so that makes the process sometimes simpler if you want to pass the legislation. But again, in some states they're very involved, in some states they're not, especially when there are no casinos. But I have not seen examples where them being Native American directly affects the speed of the market compared to commercial casinos. So yeah, not in that regard that I have seen.
I would say we see that they start geofence. They do mobile iGaming geofence to their premises, even though the premise is literally very small compared to the state. But then they can start working with the market. They are a year, 2 years ahead about everyone else on the market when / if it regulates.
I love to see how active people are in the chat, because before it was purely questions, answers, and now I can see that people are actively participating in the conversation and also sharing the expertise.
Yeah, we have some experts that we can recruit for the next seminar.
Yes, I would say so, definitely. I'll probably call for another question because we're now over an hour now. However, if you have any unanswered questions, guys, we will have another webinar most likely in February, sometimes towards the middle or the end of the February. So stay alert. If you have any unanswered questions, please send them to us on the LinkedIn message, and we will include them into the next webinar. So that is not a problem at all. So can the payment provider servers be centralized in Nevada or must be per state? Rickard, Elena, who will take this one?
I think it can be centralized, most likely, because as an affiliate, you can also be centralized. But thank you all for everything today. It was a great webinar.
No, it was. Thanks a lot, and it's so fun to have all the people here and the engagement for everyone. And as we said it before, there's some really experts out there, and that's fantastic. And yeah, Elena and Rickard and Julia, thanks for arranging this. It's amazing.
Thank you.
We are streaming to executives all around the world. We know what issues they face. Listen to business insights from our experts. This is Internet Vikings.